All right. Hey, welcome back to the Go for CO channel. This is John the Bomb. Building others means business. And I'll tell you, this guest is going to share with you a really, really cool business model, right? Out of nowhere, he just starts gravitating and pulling people across the United States. I know the special area that he started in because one of my clients in the commercial lending space told me about him. We got a chance to connect, and then I've just been seeing him on LinkedIn here, on LinkedIn there, on this message and that message, and just energy galore and just a heart for small businesses. Therefore, SMB community. Rand Larsen, welcome to the Go for CO community. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. That was a fantastic introduction. I need to listen back to this and just write that down anytime, step up on a speaker panel because that was a phenomenal job, man. I appreciate that a ton.
No, no, I appreciate it. And, look, and I've been a fan from afar, watching you do your thing. And LinkedIn is it's a previous guest I just had on. She told me how she started on LinkedIn in 2008 when it first came out, and she's actually got one of the biggest groups out in LinkedIn from a local area from where I'm from, Naperville, Illinois. And it's interesting to hear that journey and how you use that as a tool as well. But why don't we start off with like we do with most of our guests? Tell us the ideation process that went through in your mind. What was it to really think about how you're going to launch this business, what it is that you wanted to do, and obviously we'll go on from there. So take it away.
Yeah, so the short story was I was working with another gentleman in northeastern Ohio, helping him buy and run like very boring trades businesses, plumbing, HVAC, electric, mostly residential work. And I worked mostly on, the M&A side, basically as a second hand, helping him do due diligence, arranging documents, a lot of admin work, that kind of stuff. And through working with him, I met a ton of other people who were buying businesses. Again, mostly these like boring companies you never really think about, but you call once a year. Well, those businesses are very profitable, and I went back home on vacation one day, and I went and met up with another gentleman in Washington State, and this is the ideation process, right? This is the spark that gave me sort of an idea. I meet up with this gentleman, and he had bought a very large HVAC business doing about 18 million in sales, and he was going through a incredibly tough time. He had bought the business, interest rates rose very within a few months after he bought it. So his bank payments go up, and he's got a lot of exposure in his industry. So the builders he was working with stopped paying him or paying him even slower on work he'd already completed. They also put a pause on new estimates because everyone was worried about the economy at the time. And on top of those two large issues, already impacting cash flow on a 90-day receivables schedule, he had the traditional, like the typical operational problems that exist when you step into a business and you buy a company and you don't know the entire infrastructure, you don't know the entire personality of the company and the people who are involved in it. And he had to learn that. So, there's a lot of operational problems. He was dealing with a lot of overtime challenges. He had a lead estimator he had really trusted who was not doing a good job, underbidding a lot of work. And you can see these problems just start piling on top of each other, leading to him losing almost $2 million his first year. All of the working capital he came into the business with basically gone. So through that process, I met him sort of at the depths of this crisis. And, we're sitting there in a diner discussing these problems. I'm trying to help him solve this stuff. And I realized, I was a GM at a small septic company doing a couple million a year in sales. I don't know how he gets past these problems, but the one thing that I thought I could help with was introducing him to other people who, at the very least, want to share the journey with others, right? So the typical phrase you'll hear a lot of business owners say is that the business ownership journey is incredibly lonely. You can't talk to your employees about all the soft things going on in your business because at the end of the day, these are people you might have to fire. You can't talk about this with managers or senior leaders because of the same relationship. Even talking to your friends, if your friends aren't business owners as well, they don't really get it. You tell them about the problems, they don't really get it. And then even business owners like to safeguard their spouses from a lot of the problems because, man, it's just you're a business owner. There's problems every single day. I heard another person phrase it: every day in business, you take 10 steps forward and 9 steps back. And the 9 things are the things that they usually draw all of your attention, right? It's easy to focus on the losses. So if every day you're bringing home negativity, it's not always the worst thing. And as a business owner, you build this callus, right? You build this callus, you get used to those losses, but the other important people in your life really don't. I had to fire a GM today. It's like that might be a huge issue to someone else. If you're a business owner, this is something you maybe have had to do a few times, and you know the pathway forward. You're used to it, but you don't want to give that burden to other people. So where does it fall? It falls all on you. It's all internalized, and there's no one else to share this stuff with. So with this specific individual, I said, hey man, let me connect you with a few other people who are going through similar things, really difficult periods, and let's just get on a call and just talk through this stuff. And that was it. That was it. It was very much, we dubbed this first peer group. I didn't know what a peer group was at the time. We dubbed it trench therapy, therapy for operators in the trenches. And then from there, we grew, added more members. I did it for free at the very start, and then about 18 months ago, monetized and seeing if I could turn this into a real business.
Interesting, interesting. So, taking the expertise that you had, obviously looking at M&A situations, and then being able to sit down for coffee with a guy kind of sparks an idea, right? Now, it was good that you had a network, right, that you can kind of rely on. So related to the industry, it sounds like that this guy was in, and you were able to put people together. It's interesting. All my life, I feel like I've done what you said, right? Like is put people together, never monetize it, but then you flipped it on the script of being able to say, hey, well, you put these things together. It sounds like he got some value out of it, right? Long term. Is he still in business offhand, or?
He's still in the business. He's doing much better. The path is forward. He's still, man, losing that amount of money, losing $2 million, puts in a huge hole, but he's digging himself out of it. He's got a great team. He's much happier. And he's still in our peer group. So I hope that's a signal that, these types of things help.
No, yeah, that's huge. That's huge. So it's interesting, right? So from a perspective of you're out in the marketplace, you find that this comes to you in a way, right? Because you were having a coffee and talking about it, and you're knowing like I can't personally help them, but maybe there's an idea, right? So tell us, at that point, were you still working with the kind of M&A structure secondhand, or were you at that point still trying to be like, hey, well, what can I do next? And then developed, this incongruent, right, trench network that all of a sudden became something.
Yeah, without getting too deep in the woods, I originally started working with the gentleman helping him buy companies. His name's John Wilson. I started helping him buy businesses with the intention to go and buy a business myself or stay inside of his business. We both sort of knew that I wanted to buy my own thing, and it was totally great, and he was going to invest me to do that. And then once we actually started the process, I essentially realized, like, I'd worked for him for a year and a half, started the process to buy my own company, realized pretty quickly I didn't have the personal capital to really do it. I didn't want to bring on investors at the time, and structuring an asset purchase agreement and having a deal fall through or having a deal that I would need to walk away from would have either would have put me back into a W-2. I didn't think that was a smart decision to have that tight of a runway, either being forced to buy a business, go back into a W-2, or go and have to recoup those expenses for another year and a half just to get back to that spot with personal cash in the bank account that you can allocate to an acquisition. And when it came to that decision, I decided, what's the next thing that I want to focus on? And with the exception of like a small social media agency, I started and actually got to about 100,000 revenue relatively quickly. Ended up not wanting to do that. After that is when I really started the peer groups and started monetizing them specifically.
So just that, because this is cool. This is a great journey in the Go for CEO community. We're learning from CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs, from startup to $1 billion, right? That small to medium sized business. So SMB is a big deal, right? If you think about what you just said, you had this other mechanism that was also kind of working in the background. Tell us, how did that add to the value of what you ultimately then settled on, creating and growing from? Or was it did it help, I guess, get you through some rough times of obviously like revenue and making some money and stuff like that. So,
When you say mechanism, what do you mean?
well, you said that you had kind of this uh marketing side, right? Repeat that $100,000 revenue business.
Exactly. It was a small social media writing business. I
Okay.
was writing for other CEOs on LinkedIn and Twitter, basically.
Okay, so, but that sounds like it scaled pretty quickly and you got some revenue from it. But then you still thought to yourself, hey, my true passion and understanding of where I really want to go was FMB and the community that you were about to build, right? So my
Yeah.
my the question is more, did that spark even more latitude? Did it help it grow in a way, or was it something that you just did on the side to get through, right, your life because you still have to pay bills and all that type of stuff? How did that
Absolutely.
work for you?
So starting that business gave me a few things. Number one, it helped me refine my own ability to write on Twitter and LinkedIn, which is incredibly important skill. I just wrote something last night that I think has like 80,000 impressions on Twitter, and I think almost 10 on LinkedIn, 10,000 impressions. And being able to write well and understand how people read and consume content is incredibly important, at least if you want to build, a personal brand. And then that personal brand, A, it helped me start that social media agency, and B, it's still helping grow um, uh, SMB community with my own personal learnings from our peer groups. Those types of things are, I'm active on Twitter and LinkedIn. And then when it came time to transition away from that, there were two primary reasons. Number one, I was getting a ton of personal fulfillment helping small business owners connect with each other and give them a community they didn't have previously, people to share these really difficult conversations with. And then B, I saw a sense of scale that SMB community was going to be an easier business to scale or has more scale possible with it rather than I felt the agency was just going to be a small agency the rest of the time that I would run it. So those were the two primary decision factors.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. And it's interesting, right? I mean, you're still in some ways using the skill set that you really kind of honed in and developed and perfected. Um, like you said, to get 80,000 impressions and 10,000 impressions is not easy. Um, there's a sector between that and viral, right? Per
Yeah.
se, right? But, the fact that you've got eyeballs on something then allows you to then pivot within SMB community and bring more eyeballs to that as well. So tell us a little bit about so SMB community. When did it officially kind of launch?
It depends, you call it officially launch. We monetized it in April of 2023. And
Okay.
then between April and October, I was winding down the agency that I had started. And really, I consider it like October is when I started treating the business seriously. And then we can talk about this, but in 2024 is when I started this, wild adventure driving across the country, hosting small business owner meetups. So you see, like, once I started treating it seriously as my full-time thing and the writing took a large backseat, um, the effort really started to kick up then.
Nice. Okay. So really about a year and a half ago, right? So 6 to 18 months right now. So October 23 to March 25, 18 months or so. That's a pretty small sample, but still pretty exciting if you think about the journey that you've been able to grow to. What made you go from building the peer community, right, and monetizing that, and having kind of a place to call home, right, with these communities, to then grow with it from a journey perspective and get out into the world and set this, voyage where you're traveling and then you're meeting people and you're still doing the communication to bring them to an event because you'll be in Salt Lake City tomorrow and you'll be in, Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho in Tuesday or whatever. So tell us about that and how that started developing once you got that first group together.
So in 2022, when I was working at Wilson Companies, we had hosted like a couple small business owner meetups, like one in Akron, Ohio, one in Columbus, and they were tons of fun. They were tons of fun. Everyone loved them, and I thought, hey, two things. Number one, I think I can go and start my own events and go to these cities where I haven't been previously, invite a ton of people, and A, everyone has fun. B, I'm not really selling them on the community hard. It's like very much these are like fun happy hours people get to hang out at. And then three, yes, like this is a lead gen funnel when I have a good conversation with someone and they're a good fit or they inquire into what I'm doing. Most of the time, I show up to a new city, people are like, hey man, what the heck are you doing? I'm like, well, this is why, and it's part of this SMB community. It's a relatively good transition into a good conversation. And through doing those, I started one initial road trip. This was in February of last year, 2024. And I was like, hey, how fun would it be if I took a month and just drove around the entire northeastern side of the United States and just hit every major city. There's a lot of them. We did 15 cities in about 5 weeks. And I was just driving around, staying in hotel rooms, and we would do 2 to 3 times a week. I'd be in a new city, hosting a meetup, bringing name tags, getting people engaged. And I thought, A, this would be a ton of fun, even if it doesn't really work out. And then B, I think it's going to work out. And I think back to the social media writing side, I think doing interesting things with your life, documenting it, telling people about it also gets attention on social media. So I saw there were some synergies there as well. And those events pretty much worked. I did have a ton of fun, and I did grow our SMB community. I want to say by a couple peer groups through doing that.
Nice, nice. No, you're giving me a sense of, taking something that you really enjoy, right? Which is sounds like you like to get out on the road and just meet new people in general, and creating a business out of it. One of my buddies has a fishing guide service, right? And I remember him when he was younger, he just loved to fish with his grandfather and do that. And then all of a sudden, we kind of disconnected. And about 10 years later, I reconnected with him, and I find out he's got like a guide service for fishing, and this is what the guy does. He fishes and makes money at it, and as a guide service. And it's interesting because how you can take something that you really have a passion for and then create a business out of it. And like you said, at these meetups, it's a soft sell transition to the SMB community, because now you've brought them into your world and you've brought them into other people's worlds, and they're creating trust, and accountability, right? Or connectiveness. So neat stuff. So I guess tell us, so the one community with this gentleman that you helped, and you knew that you personally couldn't help, but you put him into the community. You then transitioned very shortly into from April to October of 2023 to monetize this. And then you say, hey, the heck with it. 24, I'm going to go on the road. Um, what was that transition like, and how are you being able to then keep the first group intact, monitor it? Were you still being a part of those conversations and a part of that group while you were visiting other places and creating new groups? Tell us a little bit of how that tracked.
Yeah, so the short part there is, our peer groups at the moment are all virtual. So they're, monthly Zoom calls, couple hours, you're meeting up with people all around the US. We do, we group people by similar revenue size and similar business model, to keep everything like fairly, tangential or within grasp of one person's industry to understand and help another person. So the peer groups are virtual. So, I would, drive to uh, Toronto, and then if I had a Zoom call the next day, I would find a cafe and open up my laptop. So keeping the communities together was relatively easy. You can do it remotely.
Okay. So I guess if that had some continuity, right, with the way the technology works and stuff, and the freedom that you have with traveling and being able to step into certain meetings, what was the operations like? How did you start to say, okay, hey, I'm going to put a framework to this model, and here's the membership? Was there levels like gold, platinum, silver type thing? What were some things that you started to, put those things into motion?
I think like things to iterate on. we don't have any like gold, platinum levels yet. It's probably something we're going to be doing in the future. What I've based most of my thesis on is that if you can create a really, really, really good core group of people who naturally like each other and have a lot of value to add to each other, like to each other's businesses, that is a very strong core foundation of customers who will continue to renew and stay customers for a long period of time. And then if you build a strong enough base, you can start hiring more employees and start, launching new features, new products, and continuing to increase the actual value proposition. Right? If you increase the value proposition of your core product, you can now sell to a wider customer base. You can increase retention longer and have a better sales point when you get on a sales call. And so far, we've been very focused on those core groups, and they've been more difficult to put together than you would think. There's a natural, when you get into a peer group with someone, there's a very natural bonding that needs to happen. It usually takes place over a long period of time. But when people do have that core group of people they really like and enjoy, at least we've seen that they stay together and the calls actually get better with time, and people get happier with their peer groups.
Well, let's dive into it because it's so fresh. 18 months is not a long time, but you've had a lot of success doing it. And as I've said, I've been a fan from afar. Um, what have been, I guess, two or three of the top challenges that you've learned? Maybe not core secrets, right, that you've developed, but more so you could tell the community and go for CO, like, here, I learned this based on this, and then this is how I transitioned and pivoted, and I used it to be able to maybe put more glue into what I was doing.
Hmm. Yeah. So our largest challenge is sales, right? When I say the core product of getting a really, really good group of people together and then introducing them to each other, facilitating a really good conversation, all of that stuff, when you think of constraints in the business, that is not the constraint currently. The real constraint right now is sales and actually finding people who are going to be really great matches with each other. And that creates, you really need this large top of funnel. I've probably spoken with, at least 500. The number could be well over that, 500 to 1,000 different business owners. And you filter them down by their customer statuses, like, yes, I am a small business owner, which is, my customer demographic. And then you go into, yes, I am in the market to join a peer group. And then you go into, you introduce them to a peer group and they say, this is a good set group of people who I can learn from, or this is not. And then, the funnel gets further and further down until you get to, you know, 100 different sales conversations of people in a similar business model, similar revenue size. You could very well not have a peer group start out of 100 sales conversations. So you need to increase that number considerably just to get one really good core group started. And so that's the constraint right now is sales. And the path forward at the moment, I've spoken with the traditional way that these communities really build their audiences. There's like three large companies that do it. And they mostly do it off their personal brands. These are companies that have been in place for 70 years, and they mostly do two things. It's a personal brand, which is a lot of word of mouth, and then it's SEO and paid Google ads. And for the most part, those are the two things they lean on. It's heavy into the brand side. The second way that you grow these things from a cold startup from scratch is, oddly enough, with podcast and newsletter advertisements. I spoke with one other person who was a GM at another larger community, and that was their 90% source of new customer revenue was podcast and newsletter advertisements, which is just shocking. That was the one core metric, but that's what the future looks like. That and some marketing events, stuff like that, which we've basically already been doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you're saying the podcast and the newsletter convert someone to buy a membership that will plug them into a group.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm
Huh.
saying.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, neat. I mean, look, obviously, the day to day is always interesting to me. As a small business owner myself, three times I've been in telecom, automotive, and the financial business. The automotive one is the one that I had the most success. I sold that in '09 and had a nice six-figure exit. But the fact is that startup component is so integral with the way that we look at things, right? The ups and downs, right? The cash flow of it, and do you have responsibilities, be it from kids to a home that you own and all that type of stuff. So tell us, what are some things that you are doing right now that are maybe are you thinking about bringing on maybe a talent or two within the organization? You've got 1,000 business owners that now that you created a touch point for, and I'm assuming some sort of CRM with it that can retouch them. What's your thoughts on that, and how you start to develop that process?
Yeah. So currently we have two virtual assistants. Both of them are specialized in marketing to grow partnerships. So we've got two VAs we work with. We've got another business coach we work with to facilitate one of the peer groups, and the next role for us is a community manager. We need to get our forum where everyone chats in. We need to get that much more active and engaged, and then that also will free me up to do more sales and marketing. So next step is a community manager, and we're still iterating on like the biz dev process, the sales process. We want to make some partnerships this year. And currently that's what our marketing team is focused on. So at least those are the next steps.
So when you say partnerships, is it more of a joint venture, or are you looking for companies that or businesses that maybe have a similarity, but then they can add the value add of what you've positioned as a proposition, or?
So it's both. There are, business coaches they want customers, right? And we have customers for them, who have they're already in a peer group. Maybe they want a business coach and are like looking for that. We need referrals for them. And then other business coaches want a like second tier product that they can upsell their current customers on. So, and we're offering community and potentially peer groups as a part of that service offering. So a business coach who's able to land one sale would also say, hey, I really recommend this. We'll charge you an extra $200 a month, and you'll join this community of many other business owners, or these other 7 landscapers across the U.S., and you'll be able to talk with them. So it's effectively offering a different service for business coaches. So those are the couple of the partnerships we're looking into.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, the thing I caught out of that is that you're willing to put yourself with I guess with a similar business, entrepreneur, like a business coach, right? You've put it together a group, and then you're plugging in a value inside the group so that it can flourish, but also create a joint partnership with that value so that it also creates some sort of other revenue stream in a sense, right? It's very interesting model. We'll have to talk offline on some Go for CO things that I'm talking about, that I'm looking at. But
Let's do it.
awesome. Look, I mean, obviously, per se, right? This is your first venture, right? The SMB community.
It's technically my second venture. The first one I started was in 2019. It was a company called DocuFamily, like document and family.
Oh,
And the entire purpose was creating creating what do you call just documentary style videos for senior members of people's families. So it was very much documenting people's legacy and story for it to be, reviewed generations from now in really high quality video when someone is still very present and fun, and you get to, you know, we all have like memoirs and we all have photo albums, but you don't get to see someone laugh and talk about their journeys in life. And I feel like a lot of people's family stories get lost because you're not documenting them appropriately. And even then, how often do you pick up that memoir of your great grandma? Probably not often, or ever. But what if you had a 45-minute, very well structured documentary of the highlights of her life, and then on the back end, all the other footage of everything that you talked about over the course of a 1 or 2 day period? Anyways, that was the venture 2019, and it failed in 2020 as soon as COVID hit. And at the moment, most of my customers were coming from retirement communities. And in Washington State, we got hit very hard by COVID very quickly, where it was us in New York, and I was shut out of most of my customers' homes in February. So
You know, it's
disappointing, but
oh, for sure. Sure, sure. I mean, but a learning lesson, right? Being able to pivot out of that and what you've been able to create now with this SMB community, I'm sure there's some learning points that you took from that. I actually met a gentleman about 3 or 4 weeks ago that has something similar that you just said. And I was very curious because I think it was charging $15, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm like, how are you making any money at 15? But it might be more, but
it's
um,
probably a software or like an organized process. There's another company that's very popular. It's called Storyworthy, and they send, grandma like an email. She
mm,
replies to the email and said, hey grandma, tell us about your favorite childhood memory as a childhood memory. She'll write it up. It'll, she'll reply to the email, and then at the end of the year, it goes into like a really nice organized book. Again, like a memoir. And it's like $200, $300. A lot of people are trying to innovate this space with software and Zoom calls at the moment. And honestly, they'll work. Like they'll work. They'll do a good job. I was thinking, how would I want my mom and dad like remembered to my children and their children? And I thought, you know, this is like you do this once. You get one chance to create like a lasting memory for someone. You spend a few $1,000s, do it the best possible way that you can the first time. So that was my thesis.
no, yeah, I mean, it's why I'm writing a book. One of the reasons
Yeah.
is I want my grandkids, kids to be like, oh, great great grandfather John has a book, right? Um, and that's a cool story. So, but all the same, the SMB community, you're leaving legacy as well, right? You're putting some things, and I'm sure you're going to start to create some other layers of services. And I mean, I could see where the SMB business owner leaves a legacy video, right? I could see that. I could see where I'm in a group, and what if this group gets so tight that they want to make a video for each other, and maybe 10 years from now revisit it, right? As like a lock, like a almost what do you do when you dig something, you put it in there. Uh,
Oh yes. What do you call it? A metal box that goes in the dirt. Put it
it's
in there. 5 years later, you come here. Oh, look what we put in here.
there's an idea for
Whatever
us.
the name for that thing is.
Yeah, SMB community, a lot, whatever it is that, because obviously there's going to be,
Time capsule. Sorry, I had to say time cap. There we go.
it is, yeah, that would be cool, right? Another, so hey guys, we're going to do a time capsule. It's, $20 each, and we're going to do it highly edited or whatever, all that type of stuff. So, but it's cool. I mean, it's really interesting to see your beginning parts, right? And you're still, it's a baby community, still baby business, but it's flourishing. It's starting to go into adolescence, right? I mean, a year and a half now, almost 2 years old. That's where the businesses start to, turn the corner of profitability, of execution, of processes, of SOPs inside your business and all that type of stuff. It's not easy, but congrats on the things that you're doing. So, with my commercial lending hat, anything that you've done, has it been all bootstrapped? Have you looked at SBA loans? Like, how have you treated your funding source of it as you've been able to grow the revenue?
Yeah, it's all bootstrapped at the moment. There hasn't been a need yet for lending. If we buy a business in the future and it's valued at a point that would need an SBA loan, then that's absolutely what we would look into. I'm familiar with the SBA process, at least what we've done with Live Oak Bank when I helped John buy a couple companies. Um, and so, yeah, we'll definitely be looking at the SBA, and I'm trying to think of others. Might be bringing on investors. We'll see. But at the moment, these businesses, as long as you're able to do sales appropriately, they cash flow very well.
Yeah.
They're very expense light businesses. It's relationship driven. It's
Yeah.
not hard assets, or it's not on a plumbing P&L, you've got labor, you've got the actual cost of the material, you've got commissions and marketing, and we certainly have marketing, but our expenses are mostly people.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I mean, you'll start to develop some other things within the groups, right? That you'll value add and see how that revenue can start to grow within 4 or 5 different spider web effects around it. So really interesting stuff. So last things that we do with the Go for CEO interviews is CEO, right? So client experience, engagement, and it could be with an employee that you brought in or with vendors that you work with or just the community in general, and how you engage with them. And then O for operational excellence, which is the tools that you're using to really help you with AI. There's been a lot of new interviews that incorporate AI. So when you think about client experience, maybe 30, 60 seconds from an SMB community standpoint and your value prop, what does that look like that makes it different compared to maybe other peer groups out in the marketplace?
So there's a couple things that come to my mind immediately. The first framework is that just because someone isn't a good fit for one specific peer group that I set them up with at the first time doesn't mean that they can't be a customer later, as in they might not enjoy this first peer group I set them up with, but preserving that relationship and understanding that, hey, this is someone I really want to be happy and a fit for a long term. Having that amount of trust built in the beginning helps you sell to them later, right? So you're not taking one lead, and they're not a good fit in the beginning and they never come back. It's about having an amount of trust, frankly, with me that that it's worth talking to me, and that when I say I have a good peer group for them, I do have a good peer group for them, and that it's something that they should at the very least try out. And at the moment, we've been doing all of our peer groups on free trials. So we invite people into free trials, 2 different calls. So 1 month free peer group call, second month free peer group call, and at the third month we meet monetize and say, hey, is this going well? And are you ready to commit? Right? And I don't see any other peer group doing that. And excuse me, there is not another peer group that's doing that that I've seen. I guess I just said that in the roundabout way. Every other peer group model, for the most part, at least the large players, what they do is they they have local dinners, right? So they have a local chairman, and that chairman leads all the peer groups. And then once a month, they'll do a dinner. And through the local marketing efforts of that chairman, they will invite other business owners into this monthly dinner with all of their members. And if the dinner goes well, then they get sold into a peer group. And there's a large brick wall in front of that peer group. Between the member and the peer group. So it's saying, hey, these are all of our offerings, but these questions of like, will I enjoy the group that I'm placed in? Or is the forum worth joining? Or you as a business coach, like they do a lot of these, they'll do their monthly peer group call, and then they'll do like 1 hour a month of business coaching and say, hey, is your business coaching worth it? There's all these questions that people don't get answers to, and they basically get charged between the other peer group you might be looking into between $8,000 and $25,000 of you don't know what the experience is going to be like whatsoever. And I've thought that, at least with my intention of preserving a relationship and making sure it's good and building my credibility and reputation, you can't do that. If you set them up with and you say, hey, our product's amazing, it's awesome, you're going to love it, and then they get in and they say, hey, I have nothing in common with these people, or I'm on month 4, I've tried to build a relationship, these people are jerks, whatever the answer is, you've totally burned that customer and they don't trust you. And I've had these conversations with other people who've joined peer groups, and they'll come back to me and they'll say, hey, oh yeah, we did this at this peer group, I hated it, they promised the world and then we got nothing and people weren't showing up. And with ours, like, you get to see and feel and experience everything before you actually commit. And is it the best sales model? Honestly, I don't think so, but it has done the work of preserving relationships and reputation, which so far I'm pretty sure I have a pretty good one at this point. So for the client experience part, those are a couple notes, at least, that I think I'm doing well or different.
No, yeah, I like what you said. I think ultimately the value when you are doing something independent within an industry that has competition and you could set yourself apart with a brand that is known as, um, you know, upfront, transparent, worthy of value, gives before they get, that type of thing. I think it will translate in the long term. It's a longer sales cycle, um, probably painful at the beginning, as
Yeah.
far as money wise,
Yeah.
I think if you can kind of get over the hump, that's kind of where your value is going to be. So 30 seconds on engagement. What are you doing that this is just you, right? As the business or as the entrepreneur, that you're engaging with these 1,000+ people that you've, you know, built or made contact with. Are there other vendors or business coach things that you're, how are you engaging? Is it just the events? And does that kind of wear you out energy wise, or is there other engaging ways that you're engaging the community?
Well, John, when you say just the events, we did 32 events last year with over 1,000 people. So I'm like, that's a lot of engaging, I think.
Huh.
And
Yeah.
then additionally, we're on Twitter and LinkedIn. I consider that engagement. I'm talking with people there, replying, writing my own content. And then I think the core third thing is events. So there's a couple events that are very specific to specifically like people buying businesses. SM Bash, Holdco Conference, Main Street Summit, and then there's one other that I say I go to. So a lot of events personally, and then social media stuff.
All right, I got my 5-year-old trying to get into the video here. So um no, but so okay. So I think that engagement is a big deal, but there is a level of, we would call it burnout or call it whatever. I like that you've been able to identify, and as you said, the funnel of the people you are connecting with that kind of get through the funnel and then jump into a peer group and have them a time cycle. It's just about pushing that maybe at a faster pace, right? It seems like, a bigger volume, faster pace type of combination. So operations, what are some tools that you're using? Obviously, you're fantastic with LinkedIn and X. You're creating these huge opportunities of sales lead funnels and stuff like that. But is there any tools? Are you using some sort of AI system or anything like that?
Love sticky notes. We're all on sticky notes. SOCM sticky note. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We bought a few boring plumbing companies, and literally the company was practically run on sticky notes as the wall. So I'm making a joke.
And,
But truly, I don't consider our operation too sophisticated. We use ChatGPT to create content or create good ideas or otherwise act as a backboard to bounce ideas around with, or a business coach. ChatGPT, sort of like a catch-all is ChatGPT, and then otherwise everything is on Google Docs, Gmail. That all of that is frankly pretty unsophisticated. Um, we've got reminders. Like it's all on. I have a conversation with them, set someone up as a reminder in my calendar that stays until I've taken care of it. But you know right now we don't have too many sophisticated operations. There's one thing I wanted to say. Oh, we use a I'll say there's this book. It's called the Getting Things Done method. It's very simple to understand. It's like a 4-step process. It's write everything down, categorize everything, action some things, and then I don't know, take them off the list. Right? It's a very simple step, and in my opinion, like the first one is just the most important, where you take every last thing that you need to do and it goes somewhere, it gets written down, just so you can either assign it to a checklist as in, hey, this is the day that I am going to do this activity, and then you decide when it's getting done, and then it's always in front of you if you need to do it soon. And then you take every other thing, like an idea you have, you write all your ideas down, all your tasks, everything almost just on your mind. You put it all down on paper, which does a couple things. Number one, it writes it down so you don't forget about it. And number two, it actually frees up your brain space to actually think about the things and focus on what you need to be doing. Because otherwise, oh, that's right, I need to book a flight for this. Oh, I need to, book a dentist appointment, and I've got to write this. I've got to write this customer back. All that stuff just gets jungled around versus having very clear step lists. So I'm very, very diligent on that. Everything that goes to my head gets written down.
All right, I love it. I love it. So, look, I mean, you gave me some food for thought there. With the book that I'm writing, it actually has a four-step process. I'm glad I'm being simple with my book. But it talks about assessing, aligning, taking accountability, and taking action, right? And I have some stories behind that. Obviously, stories, sell and share an emotion of how to lock in that opportunity once you grow and read a book like the one that you mentioned, and then be able to put it into motion. So awesome stuff. Well, Rand, thank you so much for coming on the Go for CEO community. It's really been a pleasure. Like I said, I've been a big fan. I've been watching. I know Mike, one of our mutual clients, he's a part of one of your peer groups, and he bought an HVAC business. I helped the funding of it with an SBA tool, and he's certainly been happy and excited about what you're doing. So scalability is on the way, and it's growing, and excited for you. What's ways that people can communicate after they see this interview, and maybe see a short, what's a call to action that you could share with them?
Sure. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. Just look up Rand Larsen or Rand Business, Larsen with an E. My website is smbcommunity.co. My email is rand@smbcommunity.co. Even if you just enjoyed the podcast, you don't want to be or you don't want to be a customer, whatever you want to be sold to, that's totally fine. If you want, and you enjoyed the podcast, just want to reach out, totally appreciate that, because always looking to build relationships. So that's how people can get in touch.
Awesome, awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much. And by the way, subscribe to the channel. I should be doing that at the beginning. Subscribe to
Yeah,
the channel, darn it.
yeah.
Let's go, let's grow, let's go. So, hey, Go for CEO community. I'm coming out with my book in the next 2 to 3 months. It's the 4 actionable items. We don't have a perfect title just yet, but it's the Go for CEO mindset, right? Is the things I've learned as an only child, adopted at around fifth grade, and been in business in the telecom space, and the automotive space, and the financial space. And I think you'll get a lot of value with what I'm brought to bring out, and a lot of value with looking at the smbcommunity.co and seeing what you could do around across the nation as we keep on making America great again. All right, so we'll go special plug. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for coming on, Rand.
Thanks for having me, John.